Good morning, it's Chandni. Welcome to episode 2 of my podcast. This is going to be an ASMR podcast, and I hope you can listen to this when you want to, chill right before bed, when you are doing some work or homework, whatever will help you feel relaxed. So this episode, we are going to talk about the time where I almost had a threesome. So threesome fail. And so let me take it back so you can get a little more context. So I was dating this guy, and I think it was after, the second month of dating, he brought up this idea that he's had a fantasy that he's always wanted to have a threesome. I've never had a threesome at this point. He told me he always wanted to try it, and he wanted to have, two girls and a guy. So him, me, and another woman. So I've always seen people having threesomes in, books, movies, never IRL. There's a third character that sort of organically comes into the mix, like Vicky Christie Barcelona, or two people are out at a bar, they meet a third, sexy stranger, and they invite that stranger to come back to theirs. So it's always been sort of like that thing that only happens in fantasies and books and TVs, not something that happens in real life. So I had no idea how to even have a threesome, if that makes sense. But he had a plan. I guess he's been thinking about this for a while. And he told me the way that we should have a threesome is to use this dating app called Field. I guess this is the app for polyamorous couples. It's kind of like the poly Tinder. So on this app, you have people looking for a third partner, unicorns as they call them. So like couples who want to experiment. There's also polyamorous couples that want to swing, just people who are in open relationships want to experiment. So it's like an unconventional dating app. So he told me use this app in order to find a third person who would be down, who would be open-minded. And so the way he wanted to frame it was that, I would download the app, use this app, and find a third woman who would be open to meeting us, for a drink, having dinner, and then seeing where the night would go and progress. But there was one big roadblock. He refused to give his picture for this app. So he had a job where he was very worried that if people, saw his photo, that it could threaten his job, right? So he told me, you need to use your photo in order to find another woman to have a threesome with. So I downloaded this app and I started, matching with girls, and I would message these girls my boyfriend and I were looking for a third person to join us. Would you like to join us for a drink? And I described myself and I described the guy I was dating. Now he said when on these apps, it's not like a typical dating app. You have to be really over the top description. You have to be I'm this sexy minx and he's this debonair, international man of mystery. You have to speak as if we were in these romance novels, not how people talk in real life, if you're reading 50 Shades of Grey, right? And he insisted this is the way to seduce the ladies, and I was okay, whatever. So I have a creative mind, so I described him, and what I quickly found out was, first thing that the girls asked was, I want to see a picture of this guy, right? I mean, that's normal. I don't blame them. I would think that's the first thing anyone would ask if you're gonna meet up with anyone. It's I want to see the person. But he refused to give his photo. So I shared a photo of me, and the girls were oh, pretty, but we still need to see the guy, because as a woman, I can totally imagine it's really sketchy to just be asked to go somewhere to meet up and not see who the third person is. And I would tell this to him, and he would be no, you're not trying hard enough. You need to try hard. He was getting really antsy and short-tempered, almost I was doing something wrong when he was the one that was not sharing his photo, which is key to having to make anyone want to meet you. Like, nobody, you know, meets random strangers without having any clue of what the person looks like anymore. I think they did this with like Craigslist, but it was all like really sketchy situations. I don't think like most girls are more cautious. They're not so like, oh, let me just meet this random person. So anyways, I would tell this to him. He would get really annoyed and he was getting angry at me. And at that point, I started getting annoyed because I'm like, I'm the one doing all the legwork for a fantasy that you have. Like, this is not even something that I was really like thinking about. You want to do this and then you're making me do all the work. Like, that's not fair. And so then I started thinking like, I don't even really want to do this. Like, I was spending actually like hours of time just swiping through profiles, messaging girls, and having it go to nowhere. And FYI, I completely understand now how like frustrating it must be to match with people, like match with women on Tinder, because, or any dating app, because women, rightfully so, they're like really cautious, so they're not gonna just immediately like agree to meet for a spontaneous date. I mean, I get it, it's because of, you know, like safety concerns. It can be a dangerous, sketchy world out there, so I'm not like knocking them for doing that, but I'm just saying that it's hard, right, to match and convince another girl to meet up with you, one, and to have her do that without even a photo of the third person, even harder. So at this point, I just started getting frustrated and impatient. I'm just like, I don't even really want to do this. And he told this to him. I was like, you know, I'm not just feeling this anymore. This is annoying. And also then I started thinking about it. At this point, we've only, you know, slept together maybe like 2-3 times because he's always traveling. Why, if we haven't even like developed such a strong connection, a physical connection, are we like already bringing in a third person? I felt really fast, and I just started, you know, now overthinking it and like started thinking like, oh my gosh, maybe I just jumped to saying yes without really thinking more about it. Am I really comfortable with doing this? I don't know, all these things kind of came together, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. I'm not, or if you want to do this, you can find the third person. Of course, then he didn't want to do any of the work. He had the idea, didn't want to do anything. And then he got really upset, and he was like, he threw this temper tantrum, and I was just like, okay, dude. And he like tried to, you know, like punish me by, like, we were supposed to have that date on, you know, the weekend, and he's like, oh, I can't do that date. So I was like, okay, whatever, so you could play that game. So I ended up like ghosting him for a month or so. I should have just ended it, but no, I didn't, that was dumb. I actually have been approached at bars and restaurants to be a third person in another couple's threesome, but I don't know, I've never been into it because I've always wanted to be, you know, the main couple. If I were ever have a threesome, I'd want to be like the couple that was connected. But then when I was talking to my friends are like, no, you want to be the guest star. You don't want to be like the main characters of the threesome, because that's when it can get complicated. If you have like a threesome with somebody that you're dating, you're introducing a third person into the mix and you don't know how that's going to affect your dynamic. But if you're a random stranger having a threesome with like an established couple, like whatever, you can move on with your life. You don't really have to think about it anymore than that. Just that night it will end. So I do see that point. But yeah, going back to that story, so this couple was in this bar I was in. It was a bar that turned into a nightclub. I was dancing. I was with one of my friends. This guy approached me, and this guy was like, oh my god, my girlfriend thinks you're so pretty. Can you, you know, like, can you say hi? Can we buy a drink? And I was like, okay, fine, like, buy me a drink, sure. So they bought me a drink, and then the drink, sure. So they bought me a drink, and then the guy was like, oh, are you Indian? And I said, yeah, of course, I was born in America, but I am Indian ethnicity. And and then he said, wow, my girlfriend has this really close friend who's Indian, you know, you're so beautiful. Do you know this Indian person? And he said the name. I'm like, yeah, because all Indian people know each other. I was like sarcastic, and he thought that was so funny. So anyway, and something to note was the couple definitely had an age gap. He was probably, I'm gonna say like 32, 33. She was 19, 20. She was a college sophomore, junior, and he was definitely like considerably older than her. And at that time, I think I was in, you know, like my early 20s, like 23. And so, yeah, and she then approached me and she was talking. She's like, I think you're so pretty. You know, you can like come back to our place at the end of the night. And this is something, you know, like I really want to do, and it's gonna be so much fun. And I asked her, is this something you want to do, or is this something the guy is kind of putting pressure on you to do? Like I know you're acting like you're all into it, but are you doing this because you want to please him? Because if it was like for her pleasure, she genuinely enjoyed threesomes, then I'd be like, oh yeah, great, you know, like you go girl, like live your best life. But if you're doing this just to impress this older guy, that's when I was feeling a bit like uncomfortable and a little bit protective of her. I'm like, you know, just make sure that you want to do this, you know, it's something that you want to do, because there was this age gap between them. So, you know, my like big sister mentality kicked in, and I was just like, yeah, just ask yourself, who are you doing this for? You or him? So yeah, I didn't end up going with them because I just didn't feel like it. It was late. I just wanted to go home and sleep in my bed, my comfy bed, and you know, it's a comfort factor. I didn't want to go with these random people. I didn't want to, you know, I just didn't feel like it. So yeah, those 2 times I didn't end up having a threesome. So I guess it's not on the cards, but never say never. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this podcast of the story time. Just comment below if you want to hear more stories. And I am practicing still, talking in front of the camera, talking in front of the microphone. I will get better. I will just need to practice more. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want more stories, if you want more like advice, if you have questions, just comment below. I will use these ideas for my next podcast episode. I really hope you enjoyed watching. Love you all so much. And the thing I love most about you guys is you're so open-minded, you're so accepting. I always feel like self-conscious recording anything, but you're definitely making me feel more and more comfortable and appreciated by leaving all these like sweet comments. And I definitely read all the comments, and I am always trying to improve, and I'm trying to find out like what works. It's kind of like this experimental phase for me as well, a different type of experimental. But yeah, just want to sign off by saying I love you guys. I hope you take it easy, rest well, be well, and yeah, comment below, and I will see you very soon. Bye. Bye.